Welcome to Elevate, the podcast where we dissect exceptional achievers who are consistently raising the bar personally and professionally to produce extraordinary results in investment real estate and ultimately in their lives. Now here's your host, Tyler Chesser.
Elevate Nation, are you ready to take it to another level? I know I am. I'm excited because we have a phenomenal guest with us today. I want to welcome Whitney Sewell. Whitney, thank you so much for being here with us today.
My pleasure. Honored to be on your show, Tyler.
Well, it's an honor to have you. And Whitney has been such a phenomenal, really kind of early friend for me. I mean, we just got to know each other a few months ago, and it only made sense to have him on Elevate Podcast because really what we're here to do is we're here to raise the bar. Our mission is to identify and apply how the best of the best raise the bar personally, professionally, in real estate and beyond. And it's a masterclass. And that's why we've brought a master with us today in Whitney to really kind of dissect, what does it mean to elevate and what does it mean to raise that bar consistently? And so I want to remind Elevate Nation that if you're appreciating what we're doing, we would appreciate if you subscribed, if you gave us a rating. A 5-star rating would be phenomenal, of course, and give us a review, give us some feedback on how we're doing so far. And so with that, we'll dive in. And Whitney Sewell is the founder of Lifebridge Capital, LLC, and he works with investors through multifamily syndication. He and his wife have adopted 3 children. And Whitney also hosts the Real Estate Syndication Show, which you may know him from. He's very, very popular on his Real Estate Syndication Show, which is a daily podcast interviewing experts on multifamily syndication. And I know that this is really just a Cliff Notes version of your bio. And I'm always interested to have our guests sort of dive in and describe yourself beyond that bio, because I think it's something that we live behind. But who is the man behind this bio?
That's a great question. Great question. Yeah, and deeper than just the business, right? Deeper than just what you see on the outside, but because it's important. That's who we are, and personally. My wife and I are passionate about adopting children and personally and helping others adopt. And you'll hear more of that, I'm sure, through the podcast. But that's a big driving force behind us and who we are and just really the things that the Lord has done in our life and just led us to do things like that. And it's only some of the roller coasters we've been on through that has helped shape us in big ways, but just trusting Him through that. But multifamily syndication is how we get there. And deeper than that, there's numerous things that have helped shape me. But helping one child, one investor at a time is our motto. And that's what we're pushing towards every day.
That's one of the things that kind of drew me towards you immediately as we met in Denver in February was just your purpose-driven sort of nature. And, talk to me more about, adoption as being such a unique and very focused sort of mission that you have. Personally, and it sounds like beyond that. So can you tell me a little bit about how that struck you personally and how that became something that you became so passionate about?
Sure. I was actually asked this question just a couple of days ago, and it made me think, because it was like, when did that start? And I'm like, well, I had to think back, and however, it wasn't hard to figure out. It was my wife and I just moved to Virginia. I had taken a federal position. I came from Kentucky law, state police, and went federal, and moved us to Virginia. And then that week, we were following a pastor called David Platt, and he was doing this thing called Secret Church. And we traveled a little ways to be at this event. And then on our way back that night, I'll never forget, my wife and I were talking about, or actually David had talked about how they had adopted some children and just helping orphans and widows. And it just struck us differently because we had never talked about adoption before that time. It had never crossed our mind. It just wasn't even a thought. We weren't exposed to that, growing up. However, the question was, why would we not? Not why should we, but why would we not, adopt a child? And so that week, really not knowing probably what we were getting into, but that week we put in our application to adopt from Ethiopia. And 2 years to that month, our first son, Samuel, came home from Ethiopia. And it's a roller coaster. And actually we just completed our 3rd adoption, and it was an even worse roller coaster. But however, I say that not to sugarcoat it, but I say that too, so I can say it is extremely worth it. you're looking $40,000 to $60,000, and that's more than most people can make, in a year. And so that's where, and I hear that all the time. We tell people, consider adopting, or they already talk about it, and they're like, but Whitney, that's more than I'm making. So that's another reason why we want to be able to help these families. But one adoption led us to another, and I would imagine we'll continue.
So it sounds like what you were able to do is find the practical challenges of adoption, along with the very profound impact that you can have on someone's life, and such a kind of a ripple effect of bringing someone in a challenging situation, of course, perhaps in a foster home, and then also saying, well, wait a minute, gosh, it's $40,000 to $60,000 to do this, and there's so many people that want to do this. So how are you marrying that into your business? I love the thought of having a purpose-driven business. I mean, that's where we are in today's society. If you don't have a purpose, if you're only for profit, it's kind of challenging to succeed and to get up
Yes.
when you get knocked down. So I'm curious, how did that process happen for you?
Yeah, so it was just a way to find out, okay, how can we just affect this, the adoption community in a big way? And, other things led us to the syndication business specifically. And I was doing lots of other things in other businesses and working as well. But, the syndication model was something that, when I was exposed to it, I was like, okay, this is something I can see growing quickly. I can see, I love just that professional business, and working with professionals and at that level, as opposed to single families, duplexes, things like that. But being able to grow faster, doing larger deals, obviously creates more income, not just for me, but for investors as well. But it allows us to give a lot more. And so, we committed half of our profits personally to a nonprofit, actually, that we're in the process of creating now, that will help fund the adoption process for people. And so, for families that can't afford it, but that would love to adopt, we want to come along beside them and say, we'll help you if you'll commit to adopting, and help you through the process too, just from our experience. But that's our big mission. And so, that drives us, and that keeps us going too. Just, we see photos, we went to numerous orphanages in numerous countries and all over the place, but, and it's just, I mean, I can't even describe it to do it justice, how horrible it is. But while there's over 150 or 60 million orphans in the world, you can bring home one, or, or a lot of people could, and would like to, but they can't afford it. And so we want to be able to help those families do that.
So was it that moment, or was it the moment that you learned about the process of adoption that really caused you to kind of draw a line in the sand and say, look, I'm going to elevate myself to greatness. I'm going to elevate my effort, my consistency, my work towards, an uncommon level? Or was there something else that occurred in your life that really caused you to draw that line in the sand?
That's a good question. And I would say it was before we started the adoption journey that, things were changing in me. Different life experiences happen, that change all of us. Right. And I would say, one, there was someone in my life that always had these big dreams, and, but honestly never took action. And I mean, it was just big dream after big dream after big dream. And I watched it cost this person, their marriage and their family in massive ways. And so, that affected me in a big way. And I knew that, I also had dreams, but there's other events that really helped me really mold my mindset and mold obviously my why, that, which is also very important. But earlier on, just my mindset, a couple of things like going through boot camp, in the military, was one initial thing that happened. I was 17, 18, and then, a year in Iraq, which is, it really changes your perspective in big ways. And I mean, in ways I can't even describe, but then also police academy, after that. And so just numerous things that really helped me to change my mindset to, I can do this, and what's the next step? Like, instead of focusing on this mountain, it's like, let's get to marching, like, instead of focusing on this big problem, it's just, let's get it started so we can get this behind us. Right. And so that, all those things that I briefly mentioned there were big things that helped change my mindset, to give me the mindset of, nope, we can do this, and have the question of how do we get started, or let's get started, as opposed to just pondering and focusing on this big obstacle.
There's a lot of good things here, and a lot of things to really kind of dissect. And I think it's important for Elevate Nation to remember that, not only do we have positive role models in certain ways, but we also have maybe models of things that we don't want to attain in our life, and reminders of, if you don't take massive action, then this is potentially the result in different ways. So, was there one or two sort of outcomes that you saw that manifested in that person's life that you're talking about that that maybe kind of caused you to realize, wow, if I don't take control here, if I don't take big action, then I could possibly be in that same position?
Yeah, yeah. It's like I mentioned, like I watched this person lose their marriage, their family, and just it cost them drastically. I've seen it cost, other people try to help this individual on numerous occasions, and they just really took advantage of all those people, or different, in different ways, and so quickly, as I could see more of of things unravel in this person's life, I could see, wow, okay, this is, it's not something I want to model, or, I want to be able to take action and do things differently, and so that pushed me, and then obviously, like I said, the mindset through military and police academy and overseas, all those things just helped me to mold the mindset of moving forward and, how do we get this done instead of just having these big dreams that don't amount to anything.
Talk to me a little bit about boot camp and how you applied that mentality to your business today. I mean, what one or two things can we glean from your experience there? And by the way, thank you so much for your service.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you for that. And so I use this analogy often, where at the end of boot camp, there's usually like this big event that everybody has to go through. And you're going to hike out, I don't know, 15, 20 miles, carrying your backpack and all your gear, right? And you're 17, 18 years old. Most people have never experienced anything like boot camp before, which is, I would almost recommend that most men get to experience. But at that time, you're all obviously very young, most very immature, but you've never experienced anything like this. And I remember this event at the very end, and we had been going, so we had already marched out, 15 or 20 miles. You stay for about 3 days. They just really run you ragged. They keep you up all night. There's all kinds of, simulation, like, bombs going off and shoot, all this stuff, that like just keeps you up, keeps you very active, just gets you extremely exhausted. Right. And then, but they're really showing you what you can accomplish, what you can do when you have to, and until you've really been there, you're kind of soft, right? I mean, most people are kind of soft. You don't realize what your body can actually overcome. And so on the way out of this, we had to come back, that 15 or 20 miles, you're exhausted, you're carrying all this stuff. And I remember going, like in that march, I don't know how long we've been going, but a long time. And you're already so tired. And I watch guys who are falling out. And there's this Humvee coming by that's picking those guys up. They're quitting. They're saying, I've had enough. Right. And they're getting in the bed of that truck. And they do this on purpose, which is really good, I think. But they put them in the bed of the truck and they purposely drive real slow. Bye, everybody. So everybody else can see these guys that have quit, And so I remember that. And I thought, I'm not quitting. I'm not quitting. I'm not quitting. I'm going, and I've obviously I accomplished it. But then, I mean, that was one day, and there's so many days, in boot camp where, in other people's lives too, there's things where you're pushed and to do things that you just think that before that you would think you couldn't have done. And, and it just helps you to think about the next thing a little differently, or change your mindset to where, no, I can do it. I can do it. We're going to keep going. We're going to keep going, and no matter if you're I've heard of boxing analogies, you keep getting hit in the face, it's just a matter of who keeps going, right? Who keeps getting up. So that was one of those days on that ruck march on the way back where I was like, okay, that really helped me change my mindset.
Yeah, I think this is such a great reminder for all of us, and for Elevate Nation in particular, is that we're capable of so much more than we believe we are. Our mind tells us that we should stop. Our mind tells us that we have limits, but really things are limitless. You can go as far as you allow yourself to go, and you can go beyond what you thought was ever possible if you just continue. And I love that analogy there. And it's something that we all have got to challenge ourselves on continuously. It's like, is my mind telling me I'm tired, or am I really tired? Is my mind telling me I don't have anything left in the tank, or do I really not have anything left in the tank? And so I think that's amazing. One thing I'd love to know is, kind of fast forwarding a little bit, how have you been kind of elevating your own business, your own life recently, based on sort of your background and your foundation? What are you doing in today's day and age
to elevate specific, maybe something specific? Was this a daily thing? Is that what you said?
Yeah. What are you doing right now that you've done kind of recently, that you've raised the bar in your business or in your life in particular, that's elevated your results?
You know, one thing that I link to like quicker results or in the current business is getting up early. I've been somebody, I mean, it sounds so simple, right? We've always heard of this morning routine, all these things. But getting up early, I mean, and I've started it, or I've been more consistent, I would say, over the past couple of years. But that one thing, and then having some structure to that time, really changed how my business got started and being able to accomplish more things and structuring my day, being able to think through my day, like all those things. I'll spend time reading my Bible and praying. And then also, I'll have another book that I'm usually reading, some kind of self-help or real estate or something like that. Or something on Audible or one way or another, is just trying to always educate, right? And but that one thing really has changed. I think is probably one of the biggest things. And I mean, by itself, there's obviously numerous things where we improve every day, but as far as over a long period of time, and where I can see a real change in me personally and professionally, was by doing that.
Yeah, and one of the reasons why I asked that particular question is because I read a book years ago by Charles Duhigg called The Power of Habit. And
Mm.
one thing he talks about is keystone habits. There's some things that you do in your life that then kind of expand upon other things, and they permeate into other areas of your life. So getting up early then causes you to read your Bible, read other books, self-help books or other educational material to be able to set you up for success, in your business and in your life. And I love that. Tell me, you've talked a little bit about, spirituality, quite a bit. And I think more and more people are taking that on in terms of understanding that it has to be a part of your business to be successful. And it sounds like it's a big part of your life. How does that bulletproof you to handle the challenges that you face in your business?
Wow, bulletproof. Well, um, I mean, Christ is my savior. I mean, I'm a Christian, and I don't hide that in any way. And as far as being bulletproof, if I am bulletproof, it's just because He's walking in front of me and behind me. And that's it. I mean, it is that simple. He is, who we serve, and He's our Lord, and I make no. Uh, doubt about it. And so, as far as our business, that's why we pursued adoption. We were confident He led us to pursue that. And there's, and I had somebody ask me the other day, I was telling them about this recent adoption process, and it was another 2 years, and there's so many details about it, just this massive roller coaster emotionally and financially. And, but anyway, there's so many details in the very end. It's like the Lord just really shown Himself in a big way so many times. And it's like, Whitney, I've showed you so many times, that I've got this, and, but we still doubt, right? Anyway. And so unfortunately, but only because of the Lord, and only because He is walking in front of me and behind me, every step of the way.
Yeah, and so many of us try to take on so much and put it on our own shoulders. If you've got someone else, maybe a higher power that's kind of supporting you along this path, I think it's something to definitely consider. And also you're aligning yourself with a higher purpose. You've got to kind of raise up, and you've got to have more help than just your own sweat of your own brow and your own team. I mean, there's a lot more forces involved here, but I'm curious, with such a purpose-driven individual, with such a purpose-driven business, you've got to be laser focused, right? How are you saying no, and are you getting better at saying no? And what tactics do you use?
Great question. The more you say no, yeah, I mean, the better in most cases, right? I mean, or when you're going to be running a business, if you're going to be a successful entrepreneur, I mean, things have to change, right? I mean, if you do the same thing you've always done, you're going to get the same thing you've always got, right? We've all heard that, and it's true, and that's why I still see friends, when I go back to that small town I grew up in, there's friends I graduated with that still riding around town, Friday, Saturday night, I mean, there's like nothing's changed, right? They're doing the same thing they did in high school. And so guess what? They're getting the same thing, that they got, still working the minimum wage, still, these things, still, having the big dreams or whatever. And, maybe that's fine for some people, but things had to change for me to make a change, and not just for myself and my family, but for me to be able to think about making a bigger change, for these other orphan children or other families that are looking to adopt, or, even the investors that are investing with us. Like, I can't still be that person back there and have all these people that trust me, to invest in all these things. And so, just a couple things, like there's, and I say this somewhat loosely, but I have a lot of friends, but sometimes my my wife will say, well, you don't have time for friends or something like that. Because it's just work, most of the time. And that's a problem to some extent. However, I've said no for a long time so I can be laser focused. I've said no to many things, or going out and doing things that maybe a lot of people are doing, maybe, a party or an event, or, because I have, things like this to do, that I consider very important, even being on a show like this, or, or taking all those investor calls, or just helping other people in the industry, or, all those things that, it's just a choice that I've made to say no to all the other, extracurricular things, or even hobbies that I used to really enjoy. I've just cut all that off. I had another business that was a really big passion, and and when I focused on this, I just cut it off completely, and so I can just be laser focused. I just said no, in a big way, and sold everything so I can not be distracted, but I can just be focused, and that was a game changer in getting this real estate business started, and doing all that was cutting off everything. And there's a lot of other details to that, of how we did that, but in a big way, just said no to so many other things.
Yeah, and it's so important. It's almost like saying no is theoretically, in some capacity, an investment, right? You're almost investing in your focus. You're investing in, your own capacity, right? And so I'm curious to know, what is the best investment that you've made in your business to help you raise investment dollars, to help you succeed for your investors, and ultimately accomplish your higher purpose?
The one best investment, is that what you said?
One best recent investment. Doesn't have to be anything substantial. It could be your focus. It could be, the way that you have invested in your time, or it could be dollars. I mean, I'm just curious to know,
Yeah.
obviously you're acquiring, great multifamily assets across the country, but aside from that, what is it that you've invested in recently that's really paid some dividends?
Hmm. Well, yeah, I would say, personally, or in the business level, initially it was a mentor. That was, that was big time. That was, growing up before really getting into the entrepreneurial space, I could have never envisioned spending thousands and thousands of dollars on a mentorship. Like, it just wasn't in I'd never been exposed to that. It just wasn't there. It was always taught, work hard, get a good job, things will work out, right? You'll finally get to retire. And so, if you'd have said, many years ago, it's going to be worth spending $10,000-$20,000 on a mentor, I'm like, whoa, wait a minute, you're crazy. I'll figure this out myself. And so, however, I did, and it's really pushed me in a lot other levels, to other levels that I would have never achieved, most likely. And so, having that person who's been there, done that, whether it's in real estate specifically, or even other mentors, on a just personal level, that's helped push me, or even call me out, about things that, are going to help improve me to improve. So that was probably one of the biggest things initially, was having that mentor, somebody I can talk to really on a weekly basis. And even if I don't have things to ask, there's usually conversation that helps push me a little bit, or helps me think about the next thing, or, or I think of questions from things they talk about, and so that was one of the initial things that really pushed me along.
Yeah, and I could not agree more. I mean, if you think about it, at times, whether you're investing, call it 10,000, 20,000, or even more, at times it can feel like a huge investment that's like, wow, this makes no sense. Because I'm kind of like you. I came from the mentality of, why would you ever do that? I mean, you chip away at, getting at the next job, and kind of waiting in line, and going, climbing along that ladder. And, you can really actually kind of timeline hop if you invest appropriately.
Yes.
And you surround yourself with the appropriate people. And also, you can make some tremendous mistakes in this business in particular that can cost you a lot more money than this type of an investment. And so I really want to honor you for saying that, because it's been hugely impactful for me. Definitely something for Elevate Nation to take note of. So just curious, along those lines, along the lines of just kind of continuing to elevate yourself, what's something that's been a failure, in your life that has set you up for a later success? either in your business or in your life?
So, I mean, failures, I guess they're only failures if you quit, right? But, a failure, um, before I started, I guess I've been in real estate since like '09. However, not at the level I'm at now, and I wasn't as focused, for many years. It wasn't my main focus. Right. And so, however, a few years ago, I started a different business, and I've always been passionate. Most people in the real estate industry have no clue of this, or professionally, but I've always been passionate about riding horses. And so, or training horses. And so, I started doing that at a pretty high level. And if anybody goes to straightpathhorses.com, you'll see some crazy videos of me doing tricks and all kinds of horses that I've trained and standing up in the saddle. And I mean, doing all kinds of crazy stuff I never imagined that I could do. And so, I got that business to a pretty good level where I was doing clinics in a lot of different states and selling horses for more than I ever imagined that I could sell one for. I mean, just doing some amazing stuff to me anyway. And so, however, I finally get to that level, and I'm in the arena like every night till midnight, every weekend, doing lessons, riding all these horses, doing all these things. And it finally hits me, one day that, okay, this is never going to be passive. Like I'm going to, like everybody that wants me to train their horse, I can't, I could have interns that help, but guess what? I'm still going to have to always be there. It's always going to be me. I'm the one that's always doing this. And so as much time even that I had spent in that, and all the time away from my family too. Like I said, I'm in the arena till midnight every night. I'm working every weekend, doing all these things. I'm away from the family. And even as much time as I spent and as passionate as I was about that, it just hit me one day that, like real estate can be such a better business, obviously, and just be more passive. And I mean, eventually, and there's just so much more opportunity there. I still plan to go back and ride and, maybe train a little bit, but that was that business that I just cut off completely. We sold everything, even sold the farm. I mean, everything. I just said, you know what? I'm committed to the syndication business, and that's going to be a distraction because I do enjoy that a lot. However, it's not the time right now, and so go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I think it's so interesting that process was theoretically a failure for you when it wasn't necessarily a failure, but it was a realization. And perhaps a realization could be necessarily looked at as a failure. But I think one of the things that Elevate Nation all agrees upon is the fact that failures are something that bring you to the next level. And failures are almost necessary for that feedback and to understand that, trading your time for, money and income isn't always, the appropriate route. And you've got to be able to build assets to, get yourself into a position where, you don't have to be just continuously working. And so I really, really like that. That was a really good one. Just curious, on you, you're somebody who models after success. And I know we talked about mentors and stuff, but I'm just curious to know a little bit more about, who are your role models? Who do you model yourself after?
That's a hard question. And, obviously, I think the best answer is Christ. He's my best role model. And I can't put any earthly, I guess, man, at that level. I guess, professionally, there's many people that I see as role models. But to give you one example, it would have to be Christ.
I love it. I'm curious to know, moving to goals, what type of goals are you striving for right now? I want to know one specific goal that you're really inspired about working towards right now and over the next 12 months.
So one big one that I'm working towards is leaving my day job. And I'm hesitant to even put that out, but I'm still working full time and while doing all these other things at the same time. I have been for a long time, even the horse business. And so, even at that time, I was used to working 80 to 100 hours a week, but, at least 80. And then I was like, okay, if I put all this time and energy towards the real estate business, where could I be? And so, there we go. So, but that's a big goal.
That's huge. And I appreciate you being so forthright on that. And, it's so important for us to set intentions and see what our outcomes are, So that's why I always like to talk about goals, is because, just to illustrate the fact that it's so important for us to put those down on paper, for us to continuously, be aware of what those goals are, course correct. You're going to get knocked off course, but it's something that I wanted to ask you about because you're somebody who's continuously accomplishing goals for that higher purpose. And so I'm also curious to know, what is one that you've accomplished maybe over the past 12 months that was something inspiring or maybe made you a little bit uncomfortable?
Hmm. Well, we did just bring our daughter home through adoption. That was a big goal that, was accomplished just a few weeks ago. And then, but, professionally, I would say even through our podcast, maybe tomorrow, let's see. Tomorrow will be show 300 that's published every day. So that was a big, obviously goal for us to be able to maintain the daily sequence, for the podcast and the show. And we've done that 300, more than 300 days now, or we've recorded well over that many, but tomorrow will be day 300.
Yeah. And if you have not listened to Whitney's show, the Real Estate Syndication Show, I highly recommend it. Go and subscribe right now. I was blessed enough to be on the show a couple of times, but let me tell you, he's had way better guests than me. And I can also tell you how much consistency and how much effort that takes. So congratulations on getting to that milestone. That's incredible. And beyond that, obviously, great content. So from here, what we're going to do is we're going to move into our rapid fire section. It's called the Rare Air Questionnaire. And really what this means is it's like, look, you're climbing Mount Everest and most people gave up back, 2 miles ago. They're driving along the Humvee very, very slowly next to the crowd here, but we didn't give up. So what I want to know from you, Whitney, is, what is the most impactful book you've ever read and why?
I think most people are going to know that I'm going to say my Bible, right off the bat. But obviously, I mean, it's the only book that's without error and that you can learn anything from. And then, that's personally and professionally both. If I had to pick a second book, I mean, that's a hard question. After that, there's so many. In the syndication business, I would say the best ever syndication book by Joe Fairless and Theo. That's as far as syndication specifically. But one book that I haven't forgot that I was reading, a couple of years ago when I was talking about the, really changing my morning routine and getting up early was Hal Elrod's A Miracle Morning. And while, maybe everything in that book, I may not completely 100% agree with, but it was that book though, that really helped me to start changing my morning routine and thinking about how I'm spending that time and being more purposeful. And so I put a lot of value on that book at that time because it helped kind of push me in that direction.
Yeah, it's so interesting how once you start to track your time and once you start to become aware of how you're spending your time, that you realize there's so much margin that you can really be more efficient in and you can really, become so much more effective in. And also I have to give a shout out on the best ever syndication book. I mean, absolutely phenomenal. I mean, if you want to know soup to nuts, I mean, A to Z, I don't care if the book's $50, you have to buy it, period. If you're in this business, I mean, it's absolutely phenomenal. And so, yeah, I appreciate you sharing that. And I love that. I say, I want to know what's your most impactful book, and I get 3. So that's how you know that Whitney's an overachiever. That's awesome. So tell me about what's the biggest way that you elevate your life on a daily basis other than, getting up early and, all the things that you do. But I'm just curious, what is the biggest way that you do elevate your life on a daily basis?
My answer was going to be getting up early.
I know.
So, outside of that, outside of really having that daily routine, things like that, I really think it's, and even the older I get or the more time I spend with my kids, it's that time and being more purposeful, even with how I spend that time with them. And I've had to, like as I'm sure, like my calendar's so like crazy full that, I have to like time block for, and it seems crazy. Like if you're not used to that kind of calendar, maybe it seems ridiculous, but that I have to time block like, okay, at this time I'm going to, take the boys to go do this, or the family and I are going to go do this, or, or cut off the rest of that afternoon. So, we can just go and I don't have to worry about a phone call coming up or an interview or anything like that. But spending that time with them, even this morning. So I blocked off this morning. It's a great time to say that. And taking advantage of all the teaching moments. And so this morning, we went on a hike, and long story short, we got up to the top of this mountain, and there's so many things along the way that are just amazing teaching moments, right? There's so many things, whether they just fall down or whether it's just learning how to hike up a mountain. We got to the top, and there was an individual up there who was, had lost a few marbles, and it almost didn't seem like a safe situation, honestly. And so, I mean, from previous training, I could see it, and we didn't get close, but that allowed me many teaching moments for my boys. Just many, many things for us to talk about, and many things about, our situation and awareness and all those things. But it doesn't matter if we're talking about hiking up a mountain or if we're going into a business, just being aware of our surroundings and understanding other people that's around us and what's happening and all those things. But spending those daily times with him or with them and the family has been just impactful things that I'm trying to be more focused on lately.
I think there's so many nuggets of wisdom in that. And obviously one is to, schedule the time for things that are important in your life. And you've got to be able to prioritize. And there are things that in your life that are high lifetime value times,
Yes.
high lifetime value impact. And, to be able to spend that time, to be able to have those teaching moments, not only is great for your children, but it's also great for you as an individual to be able to contribute and to help them grow and to be present. And I really appreciate you sharing that, because that's such a great reminder for all of us. We get so busy, our calendars get filled up to the brim. And, if we're not careful, if we don't prioritize, then the priorities fall by the wayside. And so very, very great reminder. So obviously you do so much around this question that I'm about to ask, but I'm curious to know, how else do you elevate others around you? I mean, that's really been the topic of our conversation, but how do you elevate others around you?
Whether it's through our podcast or content we create, in the business professionally, or obviously in the family and the kids. And I was going to add earlier too, obviously, we're able to help those kids, but ultimately I feel like my wife and I are the ones that are so blessed, but elevating others, I feel like the better that I get, or the more that I educate myself or things like that, the better I can elevate others. And I find that it seems almost too common. Like whatever I'm studying or whatever like book I'm reading in the morning, like I'll have a conversation almost that day or the next day where it's like, whatever I just read is like very helpful, and so I'm able to, have those calls, but also, I schedule calls. Like every 15 minutes back to back to back for hours, many days a week, and just help people, so, or if I can, so it's just, just connecting and building that relationship just like you do, Tyler. I know you help lots of people, but that's a big way that I try to give back or elevate others, and just from what I'm learning, and then, on a professional level, and just taking those calls, from really anybody.
It is such a great reminder that if you help yourself, then you can help others. If you don't treat yourself, with dignity, with respect, and with importance, then you're not going to have, your cup is not going to be able to pour into someone else's cup. And that's such a great reminder. We've got to take control of that. And so, Whitney, I really want to thank you so much for being here with us today. How can the listeners reach out to you and connect with you?
The best way is lifebridgecapital.com. You can email me, Whitney at lifebridgecapital.com. You can call or text me, 540-585-4338.
That is awesome. Well, I definitely recommend that Elevate Nation takes him up on that, because Whitney is such a great guy, and he's a hugely effective syndication partner, and definitely is offering many, many great opportunities. So I would highly recommend that you reach out to him. Not only is he someone who is effective in the business, but obviously he's someone that does it for a higher purpose, and he's got a lot of integrity. So it's something, it's such a great opportunity to sit down with you. And I want to remind Elevate Nation that, this was a masterclass. So you need to go back, you need to rewind this episode and replay it and take notes, because there's a lot of nuggets in here. There's a lot of things that you can apply immediately, and you need to go ahead and take massive action, because the only way to learn is to go ahead and apply immediately. So with that, again, thank you so much. And we will look forward to seeing you next time.
My pleasure, Tyler.
Thank you for listening to Elevate. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to rate, review, subscribe, and pay it forward by sharing with a friend. Most importantly, take this opportunity to elevate your results by taking immediate action on what you learned. For more, visit tylerchesser.com.